ultimately what you have then is a culture clash between the UK and the US, represented by Idris Elba and John Cena as Prime Minister and US President respectively. Chopra Jonas is in there. Obviously she is involved because of her involvement in Citadel, but she is there as a CIA operative who may or may not be an ex-love interest of the UK Prime Minister. Thrown in for good measure is Jack Quaid doing a little bit of The Boys ultimately, a little bit of a spin-off in a cameo, and this is basically you have a plane crash with Air Force One, and then the UK Prime Minister and the US President have to bond in enemy territory, and they have to get back to a NATO meeting. Ultimately, this is something which audiences will have seen before. This is going to be background action at best over Sunday dinner. Idris Elba and John Cena are far better than this material, and it's clear that it feels almost like a paycheck movie. It's a bit of a shame. So I'm going to be giving Heads of State a 3.5 out of 5 on the big old 5 scale, because it's carried by the charisma of Idris Elba, John Cena, and Chopra Jonas in roles which ultimately they could probably do in their sleep. What this show does, at least it does very well, is it creates or continues to create a visual universe which is lifted off the page, and it does have its issues. Tom Sturridge is still incredibly good as Dream. Gwendolyn Christie does a very good job as Lucifer. You've also got Mason Alexander Park there as Desire, and you've got Adrian Lester as Destiny. You get a lot of the endless, you get a lot of shall we say fragmented scenes between these ethereal characters, and if nothing else it really gives the tone of the show is, at least in my opinion, and only my opinion, in keeping with the comics. Money Part 1, as meandering and fragmented as and as slow as it might be, because there are pacing issues, I still think that it deserved its day in the sun. I still think this is a decent show. I am holding out hope that the remaining 5-6 parts, or 5 or 6 episodes that are coming, will create a cohesive story. That is my hope, that is my feeling. So I'm going to be giving the Sandman Season 2 Part 1 a 3.5 out of 5 on the big old 5 scale. Why? Because I think the characters are still very well defined, although the stories are fragmented, and the narrative suffers as a result, and some audiences may find it difficult to connect with this on an emotional level. It does feel very ethereal, it does feel very unique, but the production design is the thing that saves it. Yes, this is an Apple original movie, but this is also unlike any film I have seen for some time. This is true blockbuster tentpole stuff. F1 has got the full collaboration and support of F1, the institution. So everything, one of the richest, most affluent, most influential sports in the world, is completely on board with this adaptation. And that's what comes through most firmly, most vehemently throughout this movie. Yes, you've got Brad Pitt in full movie star mode as Sonny Hayes, looking, let's be honest, probably about 35 if you're pushing it, alongside Damson Elba. Also, you've got this classic clash of old versus new, the old dog versus the underdog, who sort of steps in for an old friend, Xavier Bardem being the old friend who owns this F1 racing team, who is falling on hard times. Sonny Hayes is this sort of happy-go-lucky, sort of ethereal, sort of bohemian hippie character who had some tragic accident when he was younger, but now is sort of having this moment of reconciliation and redemption ultimately. But so F1 is just, it's slick, it's exciting, it's fun, it's engaging, it's enthralling, it's loud, and you know, it hits all the right buttons, but it doesn't do it obviously. Brad Pitt really is the main draw for this, and this belongs to him. This is his film. You know, everything, he makes it look so easy, and yet there are so many technical elements which go into making this F1 thing. The fact that there are so many cameras in the car that were built into these cars, the cars were custom made specifically, they went to the real locations, these are the actors driving these cars at 180 miles an hour. Yes, there are no visual effects. They went full Tom Cruise in this, full Top Gun Maverick in terms of realism. So this really delivers. and it delivers in an old-fashioned kind of movie style way, and that's what makes F1 so good. So I'm going to be giving F1 the movie a 5 out of 5 on the big old 5 scale. That's right, I'm going all in on this one. This really is the blockbuster of the summer. People have said, and I watched a critic the other day and he was like, Sinners is still the best movie of the year. Do you know what? Move over, because actually in terms of good old-fashioned cinema and the power of movies and film, F1 really delivers. Brad Pitt is on fire, as is everybody else in this movie, and I don't mean literally, because that's in bad taste considering this is F1. This reboot or reimagining, whatever you want to call it, from James Gunn, that's co-CEO of the studios, is actually a real breath of fresh air. At least it was for me. David Corenswet is one of the great personifications of the character, in my opinion. There have been criticisms thrown at the film already from established broadsheet journalists, saying that the story is thin, that saying that the characterization isn't what it should be, saying that, you know, there isn't enough breadth in terms of what Corenswet potentially could have done with Clark Kent, etc., etc. But I'm here to disagree. I genuinely think this feels more like Superman. This feels more like Reeve, the version circa like 77, 78, which is Superman 1 and 2. It feels more like that than any of the other previous Supermen, including the eponymous Henry Cavill. Rachel Brosnahan also does a sterling work, I think, as Lois Lane. She might not be Margot Kidder, but again, the criticism has been widespread in terms of she hasn't been given enough opportunity to explore that. But again, yet again, I disagree. I genuinely think that her performance, her portrayal is incredibly interesting. I also think it really carries the film. And as for Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor, this is the first time I felt, at least to a certain extent, that there's been anyone to measure up to Gene Hackman. Yes, Kevin Spacey did do Sinister very well in the Brendan Roth, Bryan Singer Superman Returns, but ultimately I think Nicholas Hoult has something new to offer, and he brings it to the table with full force. So on top of the introduction of Krypto, the Wonder Dog, or the Super Dog, who is absolutely awesome, by the way, you also get Nathan Fillion as a member of the Green Lantern Corps. You get a number of his cohorts also introduced, and it's kind of interesting, it's kind of fun. It is funny. The film goes by in a flash, I think, ultimately, and you sort of get a reintroduction to the DC universe that actually feels like something which has been considered, been thought about, and hasn't been a knee-jerk reaction to a Marvel cavalcade of solid content. So unlike a multitude of other people, I'm going to be giving Superman a 4 out of 5 on the big old 5 scale. This isn't perfection by any means, but what it does do, it does very well. I really like Corenswet as Superman. I think he's an icon in the making. I think Rachel Brosnahan is very good. As I said, Nicholas Hoult the same. Nathan Fillion similar. And ultimately, you know, as much as people may go, oh, the story's not very, it's not very developed, or whatever their criticisms might be, this does feel like a turning point for DC. What basically happens is Adam is murdered in the first 5 minutes. This then starts a cavalcade of events, sort of like a kaleidoscope domino effect, as it were, as police get involved and investigations ensue. In which case, then in comes Kim Dickens, who's this sort of hard-edged detective. And she sort of is the driving force behind the investigation, and then it sort of snowballs from then there, and this then becomes a very complex, very intricate, character-driven thriller. So as predictable as The Better Sister turns out to be, there are enough kinks, there are enough complexities, there are enough left-field plot twists to keep anybody engaged. I think Elizabeth Banks is having an enormous amount of fun playing Nikki, this sort of unhinged mother to Chloe's son. It's a very complicated thing, and I don't want to be giving anything away, but ultimately, if you like these sort of twisty-turny, sort of weaving and dodging thrillers that are heavily laden in terms of like character studies, then I think The Better Sister might be for you. So I'm going to be giving The Better Sister a 4 out of 5 on the big old 5 scale, primarily because there are some solid performances in there from Jessica Biel, from Elizabeth Banks, from Corey Stoll, and you know, this might not go out of its way to reinvent the wheel, but the better sister is a solid thriller from Prime, and it's now available to stream. Materialist is essentially set in a contemporary Manhattan. Lucy, played by Dakota Johnson, is a matchmaker. Yes, it really is rom-com central. Ultimately, this is very, very much copybook stuff. She is there basically making people who haven't got the time, haven't got the inclination, or simply want someone else to take the work out of it for them. She encounters Pedro Pascal, who is Harry, who is this financier, who is, she terms him a unicorn. So he's the right height, he earns the right amount of money, he's good looking, you know, he's the right age. He's pretty much everything desirable that women would want. So she can't understand why he's single. On the flip side of that, you've got Chris Evans playing her ex-boyfriend, John, who is a failing actor, who is making his way doing off-Broadway plays. And doesn't really appear to be amounting to much, and she is in the middle of those two. Materialist is just a very well written, well conceived and executed rom-com. What it also proves beyond a shadow of a doubt is that Pedro Pascal is on the hottest streak in Hollywood of any leading man in the last couple of years. Right, so I'm going to be giving Materialist a 4 out of 5 on the big old 5 scale. Why? Because what it does really well. You've got some affable, enigmatic, charismatic, and just very watchable leading actors doing the best they can with a script which is awesome, and with a concept which might not exactly reinvent the wheel, but what Celine Song does with this film, with this concept, is new, and it feels fresh and it feels original. With part 2, what you get is more upbeat. You get slightly more humanity. Dream is on an evolutionary journey. Yes, he may be basically being pursued by the kindly ones who are essentially Macbeth of witches' covenness, of nastiness. But there are other people in the mix now. You've got Loki in the mix. You've got Puck in the mix. Puck is played by Jackie Gleason, who played Prince Joffrey in Game of Thrones. Great to see him back on screen. And you've also got Freddie Fox as Loki, who does an exceedingly good job. So is it any better? My feeling is from the outset that this actually feels more upbeat. There is more story. There's more. It feels more cohesive. It's not a complete. It's not the complete opposite of part 1, but it's certainly more engaging. There's more for audiences to get involved in, and ultimately, it's much more understandable for layman's going into this show than the first part could ever possibly have been. See, much to anybody's surprise, the one thing that you walk away with from part 2 of season 2 is a sense of optimism. There is a sense of humanity, of humility now, which exists, which runs through the second part, and the fact that the Corinthian, who was recreated at the end of part 1, comes back, and it's, you know, they do sort of like a Terminator 2 thing with the Corinthian. It's kind of cool. And you know, Jenna Coleman is awesome as Joanna Constantine. I think she should get her own spin-off. Let's put that out there now. And I know that Kirby Howell-Baptiste is getting her own bonus episode off the back of this show anyway, because Death has been such a fan favourite throughout the run of the seasons. But is part 2 any better? Yes, ultimately I think the answer is a definitive affirmative. And I think audiences need to check out. I really think this show needs to be given a chance and be given room to breathe. So I'm going to be giving The Sandman Season 2 Part 2 a 4 out of 5 on the big old 5 scale. Now, I'm aware that critics have been all over this, and this has been right through the ringer because of the various allegations, etc., etc. But what people need to try and do at least is separate the art from the artist, because if The Sandman is nothing else, it is an extremely impressive piece of creative writing, and the adaptation, just as American Gods Season 1 through 3, it deserves a very good audience, a big audience, and it deserves to be acknowledged as such. So on that note, I'm going to dive into my trailer. Let's do that. And so it is, you've reached the end of another video review, this time for The Sandman Season 2 Part 2, which is streaming on Netflix as we speak. Stars Tom Sturridge, Stephen Fry, Adrian Lester, Kirby Howell-Baptiste. The list is endless. But on that note, if you've liked the video, then give me a thumbs up. If you would like to drop a comment in the comment box below, then feel free, I will respond. Or finally, just subscribe so that every Tuesday and every Saturday when I drop another one of these videos literally into your lap, you'll get a little notification you can pop in and watch or listen to as much or as little as you'd like, and then go about your day. In the meantime, check out the rest of the channel. Maybe pop over to the Patreon page. Take care. Cheers now.